the past test for phonological. We're looking at Kilpatrick's past test for phonological awareness. And when you are spelling the words in your head and then deleting, you're accessing your visual memory of the words, right? And then you're trying to read the word. And what we're asking you to do is to bypass our students. We want to bypass any visual scaffolding and get directly into that auditory part, the part that connects the sounds together, connecting the sounds. Okay, so the way he has his examples written in his curriculum is he has one like, oh, in fact, I think there was one here that I really like. Say sneeze. Everyone say the word sneeze.
Sneeze.
Instead of n, say k.
Skis.
You can't read that because it's spelled entirely differently, right? So you're having to get to just the sounds. And there are many like that with rhyme to ride, right? Say rhyme.
Rhyme.
Change the m to a d.
Ride.
Right. So you read it in your head because the spelling is entirely different. So you have to hear the sounds and put the sounds together. And you can tell when kids are doing that because you'll see them, you know, and they're trying to do this, and then it's like it's messing them up because that doesn't look right anymore. So it's like, oh, wait, you know, just the sounds. Just listen to me say the sounds, or say the sounds, listen to yourself say the sounds. We want to remove scaffolding to eventually get to just that processing sounds section. That's the weak left knee. So that's the part that's weak. That's the part you want to get to. Often we have to use scaffolding. And he recommends in his book, he has many ways of scaffolding. I will show you other ways to scaffold. Or did you like this one? Say sift. Everyone, say sift.
Sift.
Say sift again. Instead of the f, say p.
Sift.
You did it. And you did not look at it. You were listening, right? So, as I mentioned, the students don't have phonological awareness by grade 1, forget it, they're not going to get it. We know that that's not true anymore. We know that the skills, particularly these more difficult ones, still develop over time up through 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade possibly. And so hopefully all of us are pretty secure at it. And if we're not, that little bit of exercise might help us as well. And then they have shown research that helping almost all students can learn this, and almost all students who do learn to improve this phonemic manipulation transfers over to improved reading. So this is really super exciting. Okay? So what happens when our students are not yet at this level? We're going to look at the Hegarty. Michael Hegarty, Dr. Michael Hegarty, I shouldn't be so familiar, is the other name that's considered the gold standard. And his work is, did I share this again? I'm not even sure if I shared it. His work is aimed more at pre-K, K, and what he calls primary, which would be first, second. It does not go to really advanced levels. But if you're working in those levels, his work is good. His work also builds in phonics at the same time. And he says 15 minutes a day of his curriculum that's scripted every day, and they show that it improves reading. And it's very reasonable. You know, I mean, we pay thousands of dollars for reading curriculum, and his material is $90 or $80, whatever it is, for a year for a grade that you can reuse forever and ever and ever. They have videos, they have all sorts of subscription plans, all sorts of things. Definitely, if you're in the pre-K, it's definitely worth the $80 or whatever it is to have access to that forever and ever. And there are others that are also written at that level. Although Hegarty and Kilpatrick are the two gold standards. And Kilpatrick, his book that has not only the theory but all of the exercises is $50, useful for grade 2 to as much as the kid needs forever and ever and ever, non-consumable. You just wear it out, and definitely worth it. And I think Tracy is ordering some for, I'm not sure, for after school use, and I've relayed that information on to Allison. Anyway, so Hegarty, am I presenting now? I'm not, sorry. I'm going to send you the link to Hegarty. I believe it was on that the wake that I sent you, but just in case, here's the link. You can pull it up and you can see the sample lessons, and his assessments are free to download. So going here to assessments, you just need to sign in, and I have an ant on me. And you have kindergarten assessments, beginning of year, mid-year, end of year, first grade, and pre-K. So he has assessments for his 3 levels. So they are there. So if you would just take a second and bookmark this so you can get back to it, and you can look at it later. They have videos describing their method of teaching and their hand signals and everything else. So if you need that, if you're working in those levels, have that, take a look at it. And there are others. Of course, there are people on TPT who are selling what they've written. And I'm going to tell you that if you are comfortable in words, so long as you know the scope of what you're trying to accomplish, you don't have to have a curriculum. You can use the words that you're working with that you have to cover for your own standards, and use the sounds in those to do much of the same exercise. When you're working with any word, whether it's vocabulary, whether it's spelling, whether it's one of your high frequency words, whether it's just words in books that you are reading, you can talk about the sounds. You can always segment sounds. Segmenting the sounds help whether or not you know the spelling pattern at that point. Segmenting the sounds is one of the first things that we would like to do. Isolating sounds. What was the beginning sound? What was the ending sound? What was the last sound you heard? What was the vowel sound? If you've taught what a vowel is, you can do those. So all of that is useful even without a curriculum. So if we think about the levels that we're working with, words, compound words, syllables, and I tend to skip over the onset rhyme because at that point, I'm going to just go hit individual phonemes. And then the phonemic level, the individual phonemes. Once you're working in the individual phonemes, we want to know, can they isolate? So here are the tasks that we might ask. Can they isolate the sound? And that's, we've all done this in our preschoolers and our young kids. Well, what was the first sound? Right? We've done that. So isolating sound, what was the middle sound? What was, tell me all the sounds, as we did earlier in segmenting. Tell me the sounds in that word. What we then want to practice substituting sounds or deleting sounds. So identifying the sounds, segmenting them, deleting the sound. So say cat. Now say cat without the k, and did they come up with at? And now here I am giving you some visual scaffolding. This is the first level of scaffolding I might do. if they need just a little bit of scaffolding. And then we'll talk about where we need a lot of scaffolding in a bit. So the first level of scaffolding, if they're not quite there, is let's identify the sounds. So if the word was, we talked about cramp earlier, the sounds were k, r, a, m. We are segmenting the sounds. We're going to isolate the sound. Okay, take away the r. You see, I'm just scaffolding visually. Put in a l. And now they can see clamp. So using is often the easiest thing to do. They have their hands with them. They don't need to take anything out. They don't need to open up any programs. It's often the easiest thing to do if they just need the first level of scaffolding. And that's what you want to do if you know the student's going to get it, they just need a little bit of scaffolding, then you could use your fingers. And what I'm doing is I'm going to mirror. So for me, it's backwards. I'm looking at it right to left, but for you, it looks left to right. Correct? Because like you would do it if you're in front of a class, you would do things in a left to right direction for your students. We have to do the same thing if we're virtual, promoting that left to right. So for me, it's like it's right to left, but from their point of view, left to right. And I try to always, if I'm virtual, I try to bring it up against a background where they are able to see it better. So I originally got my green screen thinking that I needed to hide what was behind me, and wouldn't it be fun to have those cool backdrops? And then I realized that does not work well, but I like that I'm able to distinguish my light hand against the dark, and it makes it easier for my students to see. So be aware of that. What is the student able to see? And whether you're doing it in your class, so doing it here, it's like, okay, you can't quite see this. And if I put it up here, it's not as visible because it's in front of my face, my hand, then it's hidden, doesn't set off. But being aware of what the student sees. So if your student just needs a little scaffolding, or if they need scaffolding for just one or two words, they can do this here. And it's quick, and then it's like, okay, they got it. They got it. They don't need it for the rest of the exercise. You just say hands down. So when the student needs more, or when they need consistent scaffolding, that's different. Some people need consistent scaffolding and they can do their hands, but they only need it for just as they're starting a new process of deleting the first sound or deleting the last sound or whatever it is. Or sometimes they need it for the ones where we say the word cat. Now instead of say And when they're first introduced to it, they might need this just for a few times. Cat. Instead of say cut. Right? So if they just need it just for a few times, this is perfect. If you need more scaffolding, I'm now going to go back to the very beginning, starting as if you need the most, working up to the point where you just need a little. Okay? So did everyone get this link? Yeah? Okay. I'm going to go to this level, and I'm going to actually, I'm going to ask you to just look at it with me today, and I'm not going to ask you to manipulate, but I will send you the link so that you have access to this. And oops. So if you're familiar with Jamboard, if you want your student to use it, best practice, always make a copy, because unlike any other Google product, there is no version history. You can't say, my kids messed it up, let me just bring up what I had yesterday. and you can't see who did what. All you know is that it's messed up. So if ever you give edit capabilities to anybody, and I'm going to copy the link and send it to you in the chat, that you have access to it. As soon as you have a new Jamboard, make a copy, because your kids are going to mess it up if you've given it to your kids, or right now I'm giving it to you. You guys are going to mess it up. It's going to be different from what I had. So please make a copy for yourself, and you just go to your 3 dots and make a copy. So best practices, always go up to your 3 dots, make a copy, so that I know that if you guys put in your own pictures, you do your own things with it, I still have what I want. Okay. So I'm not going to ask you to actually manipulate this today. I'm just going to demonstrate what I might do. And this is for students who have really a lot of trouble with working with the concepts of deletion and substitution. Okay. I had a student many years ago. It was the first time I had this issue. It blew me away. It was a high school student, mind you. And I said, well, what was the second sound in that word? And he's saying all kinds of wacko things. I'm like, what is going on? And then it hit me. He did not know the term second. He was not secure in his ordinal numbers. So how could he tell me what the first sound was, or the second, or the third, or the fourth, when he wasn't secure in the concept of ordinal numbers? So it's like, okay. And we find that a lot of our kids who are struggling readers have issue in the math area of ordering things. He was the first at that older age that I realized, oh my goodness, but I knew my younger kids had that issue, but I didn't realize that it must be explicitly taught, and it can be explicitly taught to kids who have an issue with ordering things, ordinal numbers. So we want to make sure that, yes, we can teach that explicitly, but we want to make sure that we're very clear on the concept of what we're trying to do. So for our students who really struggle, I'm going to work with very concrete things, and I will start with actual concrete items. Here we go. I have a pen and I have glasses. So at the lowest level, we must identify. So we, the teacher, identify this is a pen, this is glasses. Ready? And then we can say, point to the pen. Everybody point to the pen. Okay. And now everybody point to the glasses. So when we ask a student to point, that is less cognitive load, right? So I've identified, then I ask, and then I say, which one is this? Hopefully they say pen. Say, which one is this? So now we're asking them to produce the word, right? So we identify, we ask for a point or which one is. So they're going to, they indicate, and then they have to produce the words, right? Okay, now here we go. Pen, glasses. Pen, glasses, right? We got this. Okay, I'm going to play a trick on you. I'm going to take one of them away. I'm delete it. I'm going to take it away. You tell me what's left. So I'm introducing the concept of what the next skill will be, but I'm doing it in a very concrete manner. I'm going to take one away. You tell me what's left. So the words that I will then use as I'm assessing phonological and phonemic manipulation, I use with very concrete objects. Ready? I'm going to take one away. What's left? Glasses, right? So, okay, ready? I'm going to take one away. You tell me what's left. What's left? Pen. Okay. So starting with very concrete objects, we want to make sure that kids have the ability to work with the terminology. If I take one away, what's left? So that they know what we're talking about. Okay, here we go. Can you see my picture here? This is a cup. This is a cake. All right, this is a cup. This is a cake. I identify. Okay, and I'm in my copy. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the one that most of you are in. Okay. Which one's the cup? You can use your little pen tool and mark under the cup. Since you're there, some of you are there, go for it. Or if not, just point to it. Point to the cup. Good job. Now point to the cake. Okay, so we identify. We ask them to indicate. And now we ask them to produce. Ready? I'm gonna move it. Everybody, which one is this? Which one is this? Okay. Are you ready? I'm gonna play a trick on you. I'm gonna take one away. I'm taking it away. What's left? I hope you said cake. No one's unmuted. And so I can introduce in a very concrete first, and then in first level of representation. So I'm representing concrete objects, right? So from actual concrete to a representation of a concrete object. I haven't told them that it's a compound word yet, but I'm just getting them to hear the sounds, identify, and remove. I'm going to go to frame 2. Ready? This one is a foot. This one is a ball. I identify. Everyone point to the foot. I can just see them point, right? Point to the ball. Perfect. Okay, ready? Now I ask them to identify. Okay, which one is this? And which one is this? Good job. I'm going to play a trick on you. Ready? Foot, ball. I'm going to take one away. What's left? Hopefully they said foot. Okay, so concrete to a visual representation of the concrete. We want to make sure that the concept of deletion and then eventually substitution is secure in their brain. And I can do this again. Dog and house. I identify. I ask them to indicate. Which one was the house? Which one was the dog? Okay, right. What was this one called again? And what was this? Right. And we go through that and then say, okay, I'm going to take one away. I'm going to take one away and it's gone. What's left? I'll say house. So we have to make sure that what we're asking them to do is something that they can do. They're secure with the concept of taking away. Before I ask them to take away a sound, I mean, sounds are so abstract. If they can't even take away objects, we need to know. So we want to make sure that the whole concept of taking away is clear to them. Now, so if we're good on objects, I can say, oh, I didn't have a picture. All right, guys, I didn't have a picture. This one is a sun, and this one is set. Ready? This one's sun, and this one is set. Okay, point to the set. If you've pointed or indicated. Okay, point to the sun. Okay, good. Now, which one is this? Ask them to produce. And which one is this? Okay, now, ready? I'm going to do a trick. I'm going to hide one. Ready, set, ready, set, ready, set. What's left? So, concrete to visual representation of concrete objects to a more abstract representation. When we go too quickly into the abstract, kids are lost. Sounds, syllables, and words become very abstract. Sounds of letters, that's a very abstract thing for a young child. So here I'm talking about at the very beginning levels. We want to make sure that what we're asking them to do is something that they can do, starting with concrete. And if you have to work with concrete for a while, fine, work with concrete. But we can't ask them to delete sounds if they don't understand the concept of taking something away and what's left. Okay, so we might do this a couple of times. And this is an introduction to Elkanon boxes. Elkanon boxes are tiles or circles or whatever, or little manipulatives that you put on the table in front of you, is a very standard scaffolding tool to work in phonemic and phonological awareness. But they have to make sure that they understand that it represents something. So actually having it represent something that's a physical object is the first level before going to asking them to associate it with an abstract object like a sound. Okay, and I can do it again. This is, pick something else. Oh, this is, okay. I could do this a couple of more times at the word level or compound word level. So picking other compound words, it is a tablecloth, let's say. This is table, this is cloth. Okay, which one is? And then I ask them to produce the word. What's this one? What's this one? And then I can take one away. What's left? Okay, so use the introduction of Elkanon boxes to represent something else, or using your teddy bear counters or your bingo chips or your 2-color tokens or whatever it is you're going to do. We still have to make sure that the concept of this represents things or sounds or words has to be solid for the student. So after we can do that with however many times you need to, I might do it with syllables, and I'll pick names of people who are in the room where they have seen their names in print. Most kids have seen their names, they've seen their friends' names in print. So the concept of syllables is easier because they have seen it in print, or mommy, daddy, they've seen it in print, so we can help them to the idea of separating. So this is Susie, ready? And Susie, she's seen her name, she knows her name. She has written her name probably, even though she doesn't know that it represents sounds. I'll say, okay, here we go. This is Susie. Ready? This one says Susie. Okay. Point to the Sue. Point to the Z. See them point, right? Okay. Now, which one was this one? Which one was this one? Which one was this one again? I don't remember. Okay, so what was this one? And what was this one? Okay. Watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to take one away. What's left? Right? So I find that working with their names, words that they have seen in print, is a helpful way to scaffold to separating syllables. Now, I will do it by breath as well, but as I'm talking about removing a syllable, I'm talking about removing, deleting, or substituting a syllable. Having something that they're familiar with seems to help. Okay? And if it's Susie, and then if I make another one, and I'll make it pink because this is for Susie, and her real name is Suzanne. And say, okay, I know that sometimes your mama calls you Suzanne. So here we'll do it like this. So this is Suzanne. And we'll do the same thing. But here we can introduce substitution. So right now it's Susie. What was this one again? And I'm going to play a trick on you. Ready? I'm going to change it to, instead of the Z, I'm going to put Zan. And this is Suzanne, or however the student might have spelled it. So whatever, when we introduce deletion and then substitution, making it as concrete as possible. I'm not encouraging sight word memory here. What I'm trying to do is just associate what they already know to the concept of substituting and deleting. Or we might do it with, what else do I have in here? Like I can do the same thing here, baby, because a lot of kids have seen this word and take one away. But let me duplicate this really quick and make a new one. Does that work, mama? So, and duplicate this again. Okay. So I might introduce mommy, mommy. They've seen the word mommy, and then we can take it away and just have mom. And I might do mama, mama, and take, be able to isolate the two sounds. And then I can do substitution. So here we go. I'm going to play a trick on you. Right now it says mama. If we've done where I identify, they point, they isolate and produce the word themselves or the syllables themselves. And I'll say, okay, I'm going to take one away and put a new one in. And now what do I have? So I can introduce substituting syllables. Something like that. Whatever words that are already in their, that they've already seen in print and that they're familiar with in print, we might use that to reinforce just the concept of substituting. Okay? So we have to make sure they understand what we're trying to accomplish when we ask them to substitute sounds. And then we can go to doing the same thing with syllables here. Okay? So we had table, table, and point to the tay, point to the bull. What was this one called? What was this one called? Good, ready? So I'm going to take one away. Ready? I'm taking away this one. What's left? So they have to be secure in the process before they can do it themselves. And then we might, so if they're at that level, you work at that level. And then you would go from that level into, so if they're using their blocks here or on their table in front of them to do that deletion and maybe even substitution, you can do it with the blocks. Eventually you get to individual phoneme level. So, but they have to be secure in what you're asking them to do. So if I have the word no, and they've all seen the word no, most kids, it's become a sight word for them before, certainly by kindergarten, most of them know the word no, and no, the moms yell it at them. Anyway, and they say, okay, this one says this one says oh, O. Okay, which one is? Ask them to point and ask them to produce it. So what was this one? And what was this one? And now I can substitute, or I can delete first, or I can substitute. Right? So I can say, okay, I'm going to take it away. What's left? And then I can also work with substitution using go. So the goal is to get to the sound and to only the sound. But whatever level of scaffolding you need to get there, you use the scaffolding you need, and then you take it away when you don't need it. So for kids, it's probably first grade and up, where they've already been taught lots and lots of sight words, the visual letters is a scaffold. And you can use that if you need it. So if I want to change cat and I want to take away the k and put in a h and have the kid say hat, I can use the letters once they're familiar with the, if they know those letters and sounds. And even if they're not 100% sure on letters and sounds, which is where our student is, Bernie, right? She's not completely solid, but we can still work on the skills of deleting and substituting. But she needs the scaffolding of the letters. And I will show you some of that. So again, we can use letters to make sure that we're sure on the identification, and then deletion, right? And substitution, if we need it. And then we can go from the actual letters back to alternate boxes. So whatever your level of scaffolding need is, that's the level you'll use. So if the highest level is using the letters, for those who are familiar with letters, using the letters to represent the parts that you're going to either delete or substitute. And then the next level would be using Elkonin boxes or counters or whatever, and then maybe just your fingers, and then eventually to no scaffolding, just sound only. So you as the teacher need to know how much scaffolding you need, and that's where the art and the beauty of being a teacher comes in, is knowing, figuring out what your students need. It's the art of differentiating, right? And for some kids need more scaffolding and others less. And that's often a grouping technique, or how you group, or the decision on what tools you give to kids in order to, like in a group, you can say, you get to use these counters to manipulate. You use your hand, and you hands on your head, no fingers at all. And I'll say, okay, hands on your head. We're doing this without your fingers. So you can scaffold it various ways, differentiating for what your child needs, your students need. Okay, so questions at this point?
Okay, my EA question, my non-teaching background question. So again, I don't know the terminology, but it was indicated to me that, we don't have an alphabet up in our pre-K class for a reason. I don't know really what that reason is, other than they don't want us to start structuring it. But we do have, I know that we don't like the term sight words, but they have words they're familiar with that will flash in front of them. Mama, dinosaur, whatever words they're familiar, they've seen before. So I'm kind of confused because I'm not sure whether now you're asking me to replace replace the letters of the familiar words.
I'm saying, well, at pre-K, what we want to do is look at, can the student identify that the word is made up of sounds first? And can they segment the sounds?
Some can, some can't.
So that is going to be your focus, because that's what we would really like out of pre-K. What we really like is for kids to love books, right? To love words, love that. But as far as a pre-K goal, if they can hear that the word is made up of sounds, that's great. That's great. I mean, some pre-K kids will learn to read, but
We do mostly focus on the stories and the love of reading.
yeah. But if along with that, if you can get them to just be aware that the words are made up of sounds, that's often a good pre-K goal. So that they can say, that, oh, cat, it began with a k sound. What was the other sound? Oh, I heard an ah. So just being aware of the sounds.
Yeah, we're just trying to introduce them to the words and the sound and how to shape it. Many, many, many arms at this point.
Yeah, so a nice goal for pre-K is to be aware that words are made up of sounds and to be able to segment or isolate the sounds, to identify the sounds that are in a word. Or even, it's I said cat. Did anyone hear a b sound in cat? No? Okay, I guess that's not in there. What sounds did I hear? No, I heard a k, heard a ah, and I heard a t. Oh, yeah, those are the sounds I heard. So the more that they can identify that there are sounds, individual sounds in a word, the better. Now, I've taught many kids to read at pre-K, but in a gen ed pre-K class, that's not a realistic use of time. But getting them to be aware of sounds in a word is really helpful. So we know the greatest indications of reading success is that they come into kindergarten knowing their letters, knowing some sounds. That's one of the things that they look at. And, do they rhyme? Are they aware of rhyme? Blah, blah, blah. Did we talk about rhyming yesterday? Rhyming is one of the things that's often assessed in the lower grades. And if a kid can rhyme as they enter kindergarten, we say it's a good chance that this child will become a successful reader. Not because we have to teach rhyming, but because it means that their brain is already aware of sounds, and is already, when you rhyme, you're already interchanging sounds. You're substituting sounds. So it's not that teaching it has been found useful to improving reading. But if a student comes to you and can rhyme, then we know that the student is aware of sounds. And it's that awareness of sounds and the ability to manipulate sounds is what is a great indication of reading success. Did that answer that? So, I don't know that substituting sounds, I mean, if you do it incidentally, great, but I wouldn't do it with the words at pre-K level.
Usually when we're just having a conversation and they mispronounce a word, I will just get attention and correct or change or whatever.
Yeah. And what's helpful too is when you make them aware of what's happening in their mouth as they're saying sounds. So we see so many kids, second grade, third grade, all the way up, who have no idea if it's an I or an E in a word, right? And in fact, here in Hawaii, we have what's called the pen-pin merger. And pen and pin sound alike. And it kind of comes out as an amalgamation of the two sounds. they sound alike, right? So if they don't distinguish it, how are they going to spell it? So not to say that the way that they speak at home is wrong, but the way we say it in school is pin, or this is a pen. It's not a pin, it's a pen. And we indicate what's happening. So vowel sounds are the trickiest, and we're going to spend time on vowels. But what really helps is having students be aware of what's happening in their mouth as they're producing the sound. And there's all sorts of literature nowadays. If we don't need word walls, we need vowel valleys. And we need kids to be, with pictures of the kids' mouths so they can see what their mouth looks like as they're saying each sound. And so that's going to be more popular. You'll start reading much more about it in months to come, I'm sure. But whether or not you put up the pictures on the wall, if you can have your student be aware of what's happening in their mouth. And our student has this issue, right? So I don't know if you see when I'm working with her that I will give her an indication of what's happening in her mouth. And I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate some of that since we're talking about it. My paper. What was up on this one? And like in the classroom, I always had a mirror to work with kids, or my phone. I would say, here, let's take a picture of us and let's see what we look like as we say this. This is one thing that's very advantageous about this distance learning, is they're looking directly at me and I'm looking directly at them, and they can see directly themselves. So this part has been really, really lovely. When I say ah, and now, so this is not necessarily pre-K associating it with the written letter, but from K and on up, when I say ah, and I need my pen open here. When I say ah, let's look at this, and we'll talk about letter formation soon, but I'm very explicit about teaching letter formation. That letter is so big and open. Do you see how wide open it is? And my mouth, when I say ah, it's a very wide mouth and a very open mouth. Everyone say ah, and look at yourself say it. Ah. How
Are
big is
you
your
supposed
mouth?
to be presenting your screen?
I'm so sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Here. Now I'll get my pen again. Okay. So when I say ah, do you see how nice and open that is? Starting at 2 o'clock up to the midline, down to the baseline, dropping it. When I say ah, look at my mouth. Look at your mouth. Ah, look how open it is. Ah, it's very wide this way, and it's very open this way. Ah. It's actually open enough that I can put 2 fingers worth. Ah. Do you see that? My lips are about 2 fingers apart. Ah. Everyone say ah. You can feel how far apart your lips are. Ah. Go ahead, feel it with your fingers. Ah. Can you feel it? Ah. Right. Now watch this one. This one. Very flat line. Up and around. Oh my goodness, look, I cut my circle in half. Do you see that? That opening is so much smaller. It's only half as big. Watch my mouth. Eh. Eh. One finger. Eh. Eh. And the sound eh. Watch this one. Is there any opening at all here? Is it open at all? Eh. So that line reminds me that my teeth are in a line. Eh. When you say eh, your teeth are lined up. Look at me. Eh. Eh. Everyone look at your teeth as you say eh. Do you see that nice straight line? So when we talk about multisensory doesn't necessarily mean taking out the shaving cream and writing it in the shaving cream, or swatting it with a fly swatter, or doing these other things. Multisensory means connecting the senses of what's going on as you're placing that bit of information into your brain. you're seeing it, you're hearing it, you're feeling it, and being very aware of what's happening here. So your mouth has feeling, right? Where your lips are placed, where your teeth are placed, where your tongue is. And then if we connect it also with writing, that's another sense, because then we have the kinesthetic, right? So connecting the sounds to what's happening with the visual is helpful for about K on up. As soon as you're introducing letters, that's a really helpful way to support the sound to the symbol to what you have to produce. For pre-K, before you've even introduced letters, you can, the actual written letter, you can introduce the sound. Okay, when I say ah, my mouth is very open, ah. But when I say ah, it's only one finger word, ah, eh, my teeth are lined up, eh. And most of our students in Hawaii have trouble with the eh, eh, and we have some that are the ah, eh, distinguishing those sounds. No one confuses eh and ah. The ah has a few of our kids, just like they don't know which they're saying. So, and they are very similar looking letters, but watch me when I say ah, watch how wide my mouth is, ah. But when I say ah, you see that I have made it a little skinnier. So I tend to draw my O a little skinnier just to help reinforce that. But ah, it's a skinnier mouth position. So if you've introduced the letters on kindergarten and up, connecting that. If you haven't introduced the letters, they can still be aware of what's happening in their mouths as they say ah or ah. Okay? That difference will help them. And so as they're working, you know, sometimes that visual reminder, that visual cueing. So if I'm saying ah, sometimes I'll just hold up my, like pat, I'll hold up my fingers to indicate that, look how wide open my mouth is, pat. And when I'm saying pat or pet, it's just one, or pit, it's like line, help them be aware of the sounds. So scaffolding as much as you need and as little as you need. That's how you teach 3-year-olds in pre-K. Yes, you know what? We're teaching 10-year-olds this too. I teach many students at older ages this too, because they still have this issue. So, yes. Okay. And then very few kids mispronounce the because it is the schwa sound that happens in most words. So most kids will go to right? So if they're slurring through a word, they're going to say So that's usually not an issue of distinguishing these or sound. So for you in pre-K, do you have very many kids that have issue with versus or ah? As I get to the older kids, I have very few that have issue with the sound. Yes, no?
No, no issues yet.
Yeah. I haven't seen very many with confused with the other vowel sounds. Okay. So we will continue with phonemic awareness tomorrow because it's such a big issue and there are other layers of scaffolding and nuances and scaffolding that we can talk about. But the idea that I want to leave today is that make sure that your student is secure in the terminology you're using. If you're asking someone to take away, they have to know what taking away means, right? If you're asking someone to replace or substitute, they have to know what that means. So make sure that they're secure in that terminology. And when in doubt, make sure that they can do it with concrete objects first. If they can't do it with a concrete object, they're not going to be able to do it with an abstract object like a sound. Sounds are very abstract. Next, use scaffold as much as you need to, as long as you need to, as little as possible. So you find the scaffolding that student needs and you use it. But when you don't need it, you take it away or you change the level of scaffolding. And in whole groups and small groups, sometimes it takes creative working where it's like, oh, gee, I ran out of chips. You don't need any today. You're just using your hands. You can do your hands. I know you can. Or it's the, you know what? You put your hands on your head. You don't have to use your hands today. I think you can do this. So scaffolding as much as you need to provide success. But remember the goal. The goal is always to get back to no scaffolding so that we are working with that weak left knee. So we are working with that area in the brain that processes sounds. And if you're using a curriculum like the Hegarty or the Kilpatrick, fine. If you don't have access to it, use whatever you have. So I would like to take just a 5-minute break, and I would like you to pull up, because you all have books or something around you, word lists, your wonders, spelling lists, anything you have, and let's pull up a word list. And we're going to work through doing some work with just the sounds of the words in your word list. Okay, and I will demonstrate how I might do it for different students. So take a couple of minutes to pull up any old list. I don't care the list. And maybe a couple of minutes to get water, and we'll be back at 10:35. How's that? And I'm going to stop recording. If you could remind me to record again when I come back, please.